Today for Cincinnati BSides, it's a real pleasure to introduce my good friend Nate Hausrath as our last speaker of the day. One of the personal challenges that I think that I have in the space is always keeping up with all the how rapidly the space changes over time. So today Nate is going to give you some of his time sharing his best practices and the things he's learned mining VirusTotal's APIs for information. These are real techniques that you can take back home with you. And is that reader on your screen?
Yeah.
Well, figures put a creeper on there. All right. Everybody put your hands together for Nate Hausrath.
Thanks. Hello. Thanks, Liam. So thanks everyone for sticking around for the end of the day. I know it's been a long day, but I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you've learned a lot and had a few beverages as well. So yeah, as Liam said, I'm going to talk to you today about VirusTotal. I'm going to kind of give a little bit of background, kind of the basics of VirusTotal, just in case there may be some people that aren't super familiar with it. And then we're going to dig into some of the more advanced features. Unfortunately, some of these you do have to pay for, but I'll kind of argue that if your intelligence program's to the point where you can make use of it, you will probably have enough budget, or at least won't mind allocating some budget to paying for these features. So anyway, so I'm an intelligence analyst / researcher for GE, and I work really closely with Coleman on a day-to-day basis. And like Coleman, I enjoy cats. Cats are wonderful. Is there a person in this room who does not enjoy cats? Get out. I'm just kidding.
I put up with Jeremy all the time.
Good. I'm sorry, I love this. It has no relevance to anything. So anyway, all right. So as a review, VirusTotal is, all it is pretty much is just a huge malware database. You can submit whatever you want, any file on your computer to VirusTotal, and it'll tell you whether it's malware or not, or whether it thinks it's malware or not. So obviously, if you've been in the security field for any amount of time, I'm sure you've used VirusTotal. But one of its main features is that it will take whatever you give it, and it'll run it against a whole range of antivirus vendors, and just it'll tell you whether those antivirus vendors think it's bad or not. And so, as maybe an incident responder, you might actually, you may have a file and you may not know what it is, whether it's bad or not. So you could submit it and maybe get a reasonable idea about whether it is bad or not. So if a bunch of vendors think it's bad, probably is, right? If a bunch of generally, if a bunch of vendors think it's not bad, then maybe it's not so bad, right? So that's just kind of at a high level. And so I wasn't sure whether I'd have internet or not, so I took some screenshots. Turns out I really don't have internet, or I wasn't supposed to with this thing, but anyway. I'm not on the internet. But anyway, this is the main page you're greeted with when you visit VirusTotal. It's pretty self-explanatory. That's where you select your file. You can also submit a URL, and it will do its best to tell you whether that URL contains badness or not as well. And the other thing you can do is you can take a hash of a file, so like an MD5 sum or a SHA-1 sum or something like that, and you can put it in the search box. So you can click that search tab, and then it looks pretty much the same. Type in the MD5, and away you go. And if that file has been submitted before to VirusTotal, it'll come up with the last scan that it ran against it, right? And so I just looked for an existing ZBot sample that was already uploaded to VirusTotal, and I just took a screenshot of that. So when you submit your sample, this is the screen you get when all the processing's done and whatnot. So as we can see in this one, 37 out of 53 antivirus vendors picked it up. And then they tell you, go down the huge list. Obviously I didn't capture all that, but excuse me. And then they tell you what they think it is, right? So some of them are way off. Some of them may say it's actually ZBot. I didn't get that far down, but and you can get a few other basic details with this, and this is all the public-facing page of VirusTotal. So, so with that, the next step, though, is we go to their paid service. Well, actually, it's not all paid. Sorry. So VT Intelligence they have a community version, which allows you to get access to some of the more basic features of this. But the paid version gets you the stuff that I've listed here. So you can get a lot of details about the files, like VirusTotal will run strings on it for you. It'll let you look at the hex view of the file. It will give you, a lot of the basic structure, all that kind of stuff. And then they give you a more advanced way to search. So they give you a lot of heuristics you can specify to narrow down searches for different types of malware you might be looking for, right? One of my favorite things is the real-time-ish hunting they allow you to do with Yara. All this stuff I'll talk about in detail in a minute. But basically allows you to write rules to look for certain things that you might be interested in. And when someone submits a sample, it runs it against your rules. And if it hits, you get notified. And then you can download it. So as a public user of VirusTotal, you're not allowed to download any of the samples in their database. They don't give you access to do that. You can get the MD5s, maybe you can find it elsewhere, but you cannot download it, right? But with the private API, or the private version, you can download any of the samples you want. And so this is really beneficial to an intelligence program. So if you're finding things that you're interested in, they may be similar to things that are targeting your network. You can actually pull those down, pull them apart, and take all that intelligence you gain from doing that and put it into whatever you use to feed your detection tools. So then you can start looking for, kind of improve the things that you're looking for in your environment. And more. Woo. All right. So first I'll start with searching. Searching is, you can do a lot of different things. One of the things that's really nice about VirusTotal is they provide a really nice set of documentation on their website in the private sections. So like you can go look up all the little things you can do with searching. And it's actually pretty well laid out. And there's just way too much to cover. I mean, you could do a whole talk probably on searching, but you can search for samples based on vendor. So you can specify, I want Microsoft samples that hit on Microsoft, their AV engine, and they detect, some type of Trojan. You can search for that, right? You can search for like Kaspersky and Net Traveler, right? And it will return any samples that have hit on those specific antivirus vendors and their specific rule that matches that, right? So that can be pretty powerful if you have like a malware family that you're interested in that always hits on this certain vendor. And you can search for those and pull them down and look at them yourself, right? Let's see, many search modifiers. That's a sweet description right there, yeah. Tagging, they tag a lot of things. So, one tag would be like CVEs. So, CVEs are your vulnerabilities. So say like the Microsoft Word CVE 2014, like 176 or something like that. I don't remember. But anyway, one of the recent ones, you can actually search for a tag and then that specific CVE. And anything that hit on that may be exploiting that vulnerability, or that VirusTotal thinks is exploiting that vulnerability, it'll return that. So that can be pretty useful too, especially maybe with newer vulnerabilities that are out there. You may want to do research on that. Actually, let's see if this works. Always dangerous bringing it up, but open. So here is the documentation. Can you guys read that? All right. Okay. So here's all the documentation they provide you on searching. Like here are all the antivirus vendors that you can search on. These are their little, not abbreviations, but short names for everything. And then a bunch of modifiers. So yeah, I didn't mention size, file type. That's an important one. Do you want to get a bunch of documents like Microsoft Word documents, RTFs, PDFs, EXEs, DLLs, et cetera, you can pull all those down. And a bunch of things. So lots of different searching. So just wanted to bring that up. All right, so what sort of things can we do with this? Research. So as I mentioned, if your intelligence program to the point where you want to get a bunch of malware samples, you can actually, you can pull them apart. Maybe you have some sort of automated, at GE we have something called a malware zoo that we dump malware into, and it does a lot of automated analysis on that malware. And so you can do research to learn new things about the malware that you're taking a look at. And then, yeah, as I said before, then you would want to feed your detection tools so that you can find it in your environment if it hits, right? We can also use it to test our detection tools. So in this instance, say we have a sandbox that we run things through. Say the sandbox is meant to handle multiple file types, and you want to put these files in there, run them, and see what happens. Does our sandbox detect them as bad? Does it let them go through? I don't know. So maybe with VirusTotal we can provide a search that'll give us a bunch of random files of each of these types that we can then test in our sandbox, right? So it's kind of my little example here. We can take docs, PDFs, RTFs, PowerPoints, anything else, EXEs if we want, I guess, and then say for each of those file types, we're going to run this search. And so this provides, I guess this is I need to do a little explanation here. The VT Intelligence Downloader is a little Python script that I'll talk about in a minute, or maybe a little more in depth in a minute, but it's a little script provided by VirusTotal to help you download files. It's very handy. So you specify n equals 100, so I want 100 of each of these. And then type is, so this is our search pattern here inside the quotes. The type is what we're providing it, so type doc, type PowerPoint. We want positives is a descriptor for, we want it to hit on 10 or more AV vendors. So if 10 or more AV vendors thought it was bad, that's true. That condition is true, right? FS is first seen. So say we want newer samples, we could provide the date maybe a week in the past. So if our date is a week ago, then first seen is a week ago. That means it's a relatively new sample, or at least was uploaded recently. And then say also that we have McAfee in our environment, and we want anything that McAfee thinks is clean. So by combining all these, we can maybe get a bunch of samples, a bunch of files that are bad that we would miss normally on our host system, but that we still want to test against our sandbox or our other detection tools so that we can see whether we can pick them up through other means or not, right? And then you would just run those, on the back end, it'll download all this stuff, and then you would run those through, whatever you want to test. Could be an IDS, maybe you want to run them over the network, whatever. So pause for beverage. Have I said APT yet? Are we playing that drinking game? APT. Anyway, who knew? Beer is not really hydrating for the palate when you're speaking. Wow, that's odd. All right. Next up, hunting. So VirusTotal has a whole section in their private section that's called hunting. What do you think it is? Well, you're going to look for specific things. It's not searching. You're looking for live samples that are coming in. And the way we do that is by writing Yara rules, as I mentioned before. So Yara, for those who are not familiar, it was a program that was written to do malware analysis. So it allows you to write very descriptive rules in kind of an easy format that, or an easily understood format that can break apart malware and detect on malware. So VirusTotal then leverages that to search for malware. What a thought. So let's see. So I guess I'll just jump right into Yara. So here's kind of an example rule that I took straight from Yara's website. So this one, meta, don't worry about that. It's just meta. The main thing, though, are the strings and the conditions. So in this rule, the strings, we've got 3 strings that we're declaring. The first 2, A and B, are both binary code strings. They look like binary code. They're just bytes. And then the third string is just your classic string. It's just classic text that you're looking for. And then the condition specifies how in those strings, what we're looking for with those strings. So if anything hits on A or B or C, then it's going to return true, and it's going to say that it was a hit, right? Pretty simple. So Yara strings, obviously I'm not going to get into all of them, but here are some of the conventions that you can use. First one, this is a string. You can also provide ASCII, wide, no case, different descriptors afterwards so that you can narrow down the things you're looking for. ASCII is your typical 1-byte character that you're looking for. Wide strings are like Unicode, so they're actually 2 bytes. Yara by default looks just for ASCII. So if you think you might need to detect something that's using wide strings, which can happen, then you probably want to specify ASCII and wide. It'll look for both. And then no case is case insensitive. Next one, those are our typical hex strings. Already showed that. But C is a little bit more complex hex string. You've got your first 2 bytes, and then the parentheses is kind of a grouping, right? And what you're looking for with the pipe is either 62 or 63. So it could be either of them, right? 45, and then question marks. The question marks are kind of a mark for any byte. So there are examples where if you think down in assembly, what if you have a memory address that's in the assembly? Maybe you probably won't. That's going to change based off when it's running, right? So so we'll want to provide quotes for that. And then lastly, regular expressions. Not going to get into how to do regular expressions, but you can do them. They're powerful, but you don't always need to use them. Actually, I don't use them very much with Yara because everything else, you tend to detect easily enough without using them. So it's kind of nice. They're also expensive processing-wise. So, and then our conditionals. So I actually made a mistake here that I just noticed. All of them isn't a thing. So any of them is a thing. All of them, I don't think it is. Hell, what do I know? I use any of them. So then we got like A or B and C. So you can do your typical logical groupings, right? You can specify the file size, like maybe you want files that are greater than 200 kilobytes. And then the last 2 are offsets. So think of a piece of malware that may have a certain header. Maybe they've got a certain string, X number of bytes in its header. I think of, Ghost comes to mind. So you can specify like an offset. So A is you're looking for that string at 100 bytes into the file. And the next one is A in a range, so between 0 and 100 bytes. So I don't always have to use them, but they're there. And they, when you need them, they can help cut down on processing a lot. So it's kind of nice. VirusTotal, VTMIS. Actually, I forgot to mention that. So right now, it looks like I think they branded it VirusTotal Intelligence. I don't see VirusTotal Malware Intelligence Services anywhere anymore on their website. So maybe that's not a thing anymore. Yeah? OK. Good.
Not a thing.
Not a thing. Good. So we call it VTMIS because we call it VTMIS. I don't know. Anyway, so that's why that's there. Sorry for confusion, but I know, fail. Anyway, they do provide specific conditions within Yara, so they've kind of modified Yara, which is pretty nice. So you can actually specify in your conditionals, like I want samples that have only hit McAfee. You can do that within your Yara rules. And you can also, like we talked before, like we did with the searching, we have new files, so if it's a newly submitted file, and if positives are greater than 10, we can do that within Yara as well. We can also match signatures. So, as I showed here, Trojan.generic, you can also wildcard these. So maybe you want to do Trojan.star, and it'll look for anything Trojan.whatever, right? And then there's tags. You can also, oh, that's the CVE I was talking about. Yeah, I'm good at numbers. Tags contains that specific CVE, so we'll look for anything that exploits that vulnerability. And so here's what the rule sets look like. It's a little cut off, not too bad. This is what it looks like in their interface. So you can specify all these new rule sets and kind of organize them in a logical fashion for you, right? I blacked out some of the little more sensitive ones. Sorry. But the one I brought up was just a generic little Ouroboros hex string that was the little Ouroboros string. Then like the it's in like the lead speak, right? So it's kind of the default for that rootkit. And I just added it to test and see if it hits on anything. And then, so you can write all these rules, and you can write a ton of rules. So one of my rule sets is like 6,000 lines because I've combined all the stuff that we've got. I just combined it into one rule set and just slammed it in there, and it was okay with that. So it's kind of nice. It can handle a lot, and it can also slam your inbox with notifications. So obviously, if you're trying to detect all this stuff real time, you also want to be notified of it. This is the notifications in their interface, and it'll show you, a live stream of all the things that you've got. It's kind of cumbersome to do it that way. You can also get it emailed to you. So that's kind of nice. And there are a couple other options as well. But you can also, you can't see the checkboxes really on the left, but you can check things, download them, do whatever with them, clear them out. I don't think I've ever cleared mine out. But yeah, and then the last thing, the tab that I'm not going to show, though, up at the top there is scan files. So you can actually select a file and scan it within VirusTotal, which runs your YAR rules against it. And I'm like, why would you do that? If I have a file and I have my YAR rules on my disk, wouldn't I just run them myself? I don't know. Maybe if you want to do like the VirusTotal specific conditions or something, right? Anyway, so here's a little screenshot. Actually, let me see if this works, because this is better if I can do it this way. All right, so if this is cached right, then it'll work. But so you can actually click on every one of your files within, and you can see information about it. And if you recall the other one, it kind of gives you a limited set of information. You do get your MD5, your SHA-1s, but when you've got the private API, you can actually go in and see a lot more. Does this work? Yes. All right. So here's some more information, more details about the file. Here are the strings that I was talking about. It doesn't do any sort of filtering, so it looks like it just runs default strings against it, which will show you like 4-byte strings, which is it's a lot of junk that gets added in there. And then the hex view. Oh, that has to load. Oops. Your typical malware, your analysis, your vendor analysis. But here's an interesting thing. So tell you who submitted it, right? So what we've got here is the data was submitted, and if there are multiple submitters, you'll see different rows. It looks like this was only submitted once. Here was the original file name. So these question marks are probably another language that I don't have on my computer, or that VirusTotal doesn't want to display. The source is, and we'll talk more about this in a bit, but the source is a unique hash of the user that submitted it. You might be able to intuitively think like, that might be interesting. This is the user that submitted it. And then the country that it was submitted from. So in this case, I don't know, is BE Belize, Belgium? I don't remember. Belgium? Thank you. Couldn't remember. So it gives you a lot more information, which is sweet. Next up, automation. So all this is great, but if we're going to do a lot, if we're going to try to get a lot of malware, we're going to want to automate it sometime. I don't know about you guys, but I'm pretty lazy when it comes to like doing manual tasks, so I like to make the computer do it for me. I'm sure everyone in this room agrees, right? So VirusTotal has a very nice API that you can leverage to automate a lot of these tasks and pull down a lot of the information. So again, on the automation front, on the API front, they have a lot of great documentation. I think I have a tab, but I won't bring it up. But it's a lot. They even provide specific Python examples. So they're big on Python, I'm big on Python, who isn't? But they provide a lot of code examples that'll do all their API calls and show you how to use them. They also provide a couple of scripts publicly that all you have to do is just put your API key in and run them, and they'll do the things that they want to do. So like the intelligence downloader, that's a script they provide. It works really well. They actually have a server-side limitation of you can only download 100 samples at one time. And then they write this script that says, well, we'll let you download 500, but you can only download it 100 at a time. So they provide a script to break that server-side limitation. Cool. And then vtfiles.py, I'm going to talk about in a minute because it's cool. Oh yeah, and so with the hunting things as well, I mentioned emails, so that you can send email notifications. You can pull those apart and get information about the malware that hit on your rules. And then they also provide an RSS or a JSON feed. So you can query your own JSON feed of what you hit, drop that into Python, and then go from there. Do whatever processing you need to do with it. Makes it really easy to pull all the information about the stuff, all the malware that's hitting on the rules that you've got up on VirusTotal. And then, let's see. So yeah, the public and private APIs are different. So VirusTotal has a community edition that is free. You can sign up for it, and you can do a lot of basic things like search files. You can submit files for scanning and then pull down the results. You can also do URLs as well. But I think there are a couple other things, but that's about it, right? It's pretty limited. But with a private API, that's where it really unlocks your ability to query all the extra information that we want. So do the Pythons. One nice thing is no longer do we need to use URL lib or URL lib 2 to query VirusTotal. Thank God. If you've ever used those, I don't like them. They're I don't know, they're kind of cumbersome. They're fine, they work, but Python request library is so simple, and it will even take JSON output, and you just do request or response.json, and it just gives you a nicely formatted JSON object. Nothing else you have to do. That's awesome. So like this is an example of using the API to pull a report about a whole malware sample. So this is all the script is. Import requests, then you give your parameters, which is of course your API key, and the resource is the hash of the file that you want to look up, and then you call request.get, and there you go, response.json, and now you have a JSON object. Since I'm not on the internet, I can't do that, but let me. Is that what this is? Hold on. I guess nope. How about, is that big? Get bigger. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So this is the same sort of thing. I just wrote this little script last night. Sorry, I'm importing local settings rather than putting my API key in here. But it's basically the exact same thing, except we're printing the JSON response. And then that is up here, I think. Yes. So Python Iran v. Sorry, this is terrible because it's all green. But here's the big JSON object that it returns. And that looks terrible. So what we would really like to do, though, is improve on that. So this one is a little bit better. What we do is we take the JSON response, and that immediately becomes a Python dictionary. I don't know if you're familiar with dictionaries or not, but it's a really, really nice way to read through a JSON structured type object, right? So in this example, so we get our response. We want to get the MD5, and we're going to print out that MD5. This is all you need to do. We'll ignore the string. That's just kind of a whole thing. But JSON response, the key is MD5. So we just tell the response, hey, we want the MD5 key, and then it returns it, right? So that's kind of how a dictionary works. And then we can print out other things like down here, we scan it with this McAfee version, and this is how you get the McAfee version out of there. And then we can see if right here, if it's detected. So that'll tell us that's true or false value, whether McAfee version detected it or not. And then if so, we detected it as whatever the result is. I think Krista was asking about this earlier, but let's see. So, oh no, I don't think I have this run. Oh yeah, here we go, good. So this is the output of that one. So it's the same thing, we just pulled a bunch of data out of it. And so that's kind of a really basic way to, on how you would automate things. So you get the report, you're pulling your data out, and then you're doing something with it. In this case, we're just doing a dumb little print, but you could maybe dump that into a database, store it for later. You could maybe dump it into your indicators database, and then look for it in your environment, right? So that's that. Oh yeah, I already talked about this. All right, so that gets us to the fun part, creeping. So no one likes a creeper, someone that just kind of stares at you and watches you and all that kind of stuff. But I don't think malware cares very much. So you guys have actually seen this exact slide today, Liam, which is hilarious. Yes, Google image search. All right. So again, for those who are not familiar with the kill chain, it is kind of your whole, all the steps between building your attack, doing your, obviously doing your reconnaissance, building your attack, delivering it, exploiting exactly what it says. So these are the steps an attacker would take to get into your environment and go take the things that they're interested in. And then, well, part of the kill chain is just which step are you killing it at? Are you stopping them at? And how expensive is it once they hit that point, right? So kind of logically, the further along the kill chain your attackers get, the more cost it's going to be to you, especially if they get to the end of it, the actions on intent, where they're in your network, they're moving laterally, they're going after maybe your intellectual property, whatever they're interested in, and they're trying to steal that and take it out of your network, right? That can get pretty expensive. So, but the whole point of this is a lot of these steps we can already detect, and they're pretty easily, well, I wouldn't say easily detectable, but there are well-known ways you can do detection on these. Delivery, so say someone sends you a phishing email, that's in the delivery stage. If you have an email scanner that's able to detect that, then you stop them at the delivery phase, right? Same with the exploitation, installation. Maybe your antivirus can see those and will stop it before that happens, right? And then at the end, your post-compromise. Command and control is when they're connecting out to their servers, and they're maybe pulling down updates. They're communicating in some way. So those you'll see on network sensors. Same with maybe actions on intent. They're moving laterally. You probably see that in logs if you're doing logging, hopefully. A bunch of strange logons to different servers across your network, or maybe they're sending CMD or Windows credential extractor across your network. Maybe you can detect that, right? Those are all pretty well-known ways to detect. Reconnaissance, that's the front end. Maybe they're scanning your DMZs. You can see that in logs as well. But weaponization is stuff they're doing on their end, right? How do you detect that? Well, it turns out a lot of bad guys like to test their stuff against VirusTotal. So if they're sending their samples to VirusTotal, then wouldn't it stand to reason that we can figure out maybe when they're doing that? Wouldn't that be awesome? If we see when they're sending samples to VirusTotal, we can pull those down and start building detections for that before it even hits our network. That's a theory, at least. That would be awesome, right? So VirusTotal knows which users submit samples, right? They know which users do that. They know which IP addresses the samples are coming from. Never mind Tor and things like that. Yes, that happens. It's not perfect. We know that malware authors like to test for AV detection. They want to make sure that they're going to bypass whatever antivirus you have on your network if they're targeting you. So is there a way that we can correlate, correlate the samples and the submitters, right? Yes. So remember this. So the source is provided to us. We've got the hash in this. So if we start building a database, then maybe we can start to determine who our submitters are and start watching those submitters. So, but there is kind of a kicker right now. The problem is that this information that I show here, the source, you can't actually go say like, hey, VirusTotal, here's this hash. What's the source of that hash? They don't let you do that yet. I don't know if they will, hopefully, right? And you can't scrape that web page. They don't like that. I don't know why. Anyway, but we do have a solution, and it's this API call. So this is, unfortunately, this API call is only provided to like the top tier of the payers, basically. So the unlimited version. So you can download as many samples as you want, all that kind of stuff. They only allow that version to get this API call. But what it does is it returns a live feed of every single file that's submitted to VirusTotal. Only 1,000 at a time, but it will give you the information you're looking for. And you can store that yourself and query it yourself. So if you build a database to store all this and keep it forever, hopefully it doesn't get too big, but you'll have all that information. You'll have the information they have until they give you access later. So that's exactly the stuff we're looking for. So if you were to query this API call and get the return JSON, it comes back in JSON, of course. It gives you the name of the file, gives you the source ID. Of course, you have the MD5 as well. It doesn't give you the country, which is kind of weird. Whatever, but this does. So this is a notification email from the hunting thing, your YAR rules. So this sample hits. It does tell you the source ID, so that would line up with that source ID. And then it does tell you the country. I'm guessing ZZ is, we don't know. So maybe Tor, or maybe outer space. I don't know. So I haven't been with GE that long, so I'm not really good at charts, so bear with me. I'm sorry. I'm really learning, all right? I don't do charts, but so anyway, here's kind of my explanation, and hopefully it doesn't suck. So on the left, we have our distribution feed. We've got source ID A, B, C, A, D, A, well, whatever. You can understand that, right? And the associated MD5. And we're storing that in our ID database. And then on the right, we have our notification feed. And so basically what this is saying is, from our notifications, we're doing analysis on those. We already have a lot of samples, say, that we've attributed to bad actors. If your intelligence program is to a point where you know certain groups that are targeting you and you can identify them, when you're getting samples from your notifications feed, you're looking for things for those groups anyways. And so hopefully you'll be able to take those, pull them apart and say, yes, this sample belongs with a specific group that's targeting us, and we want to look for that group, right? So we know, so say we're doing that analysis and we understand a lot of that, right? Maybe we know that we've determined from doing this that anything coming from source A is hitting on a certain group that we know about. Now we know that source ID A is a bad group. So what we then do is go back in our database and we search for anything that hit on source ID A. And so on the left there, maybe that little bottom one that's highlighted in orange, maybe that didn't come through our notifications feed. We didn't know about it. So therefore, we just picked up a new sample. Maybe it's a different type of backdoor that we didn't know the actor was going to start using. Now we know about that, and we can pull it apart. We can drop it into our indicators database, and then feed our tools to go look for it. So that's kind of the theory behind it. So, oh yes, I just said that. Excellent. Now, this is where vtfile.py comes in. So vtfile.py is also provided by VirusTotal. It's very nice. It basically provides this automation of pulling from the notifications feed. And the nice thing about it, though, so since there's a limitation of only 1,000 files, and I don't remember what the number of requests per hour is that you can call this API call. Obviously, it might be a little expensive on their end, so you don't want to call it every second. But you can say maybe call it every 10 seconds, and this script that they provided will actually keep track of the last sample that you received. And part of the API call allows you to specify that sample. So you can say, like, I want to do the max limit of 1,000 samples. Here's the last one I got. And if you call this maybe every 5 seconds, hopefully they're not getting 1,000 samples every 5 seconds. They're not. It'll give you maybe 100 new samples or 50 or something, whatever the number is, right? So it kind of allows you to like mark where you've left off and just return the new things that you care about. So they provided this script to allow you to do that. You would have to do a little modification, and I would have to do a little modification to dump it into a database. So some of the limitations, though, are like, as I mentioned, historical source IDs. You're only going to know about the source IDs that start when you are collecting from that notification feed going forward. You can't query at this time. You can't query anything in the past. That kind of sucks, but whatever, we'll deal with it. Whenever you start doing this, and I think there are some other people out there that I'm sure are collecting this this type of information. Maybe eventually we'll have an open database of source IDs. I don't know. But maybe also they'll add someday the ability to query like historical source IDs. That would be awesome. I don't know if that's on their roadmap or not. So that's that. And then one other little thing that I threw in here that I thought was interesting was import hashing. So this takes like when you're importing DLLs and things like that into an executable or a DLL that you're going to use. The order of the way it imports is important, and the functions that it ends up using. So Bandian, I guess, developed a hash that it's based off that order, and it can kind of help detect maybe, theoretically detect reuse of code. So reuse of like the functions that you're using or the imports that you're using. And so VirusTotal does provide an import hash of all their files, so you can theoretically find import hashes that match certain groups that you care about and start looking for those. So that's kind of another avenue. Neither of these are really foolproof, but say your bad guys start submitting over Tor, or they can obviously change the order of their imports, that kind of stuff, but can help you maybe narrow down certain samples. So I guess to kind of wrap up, obviously I love their help. It's really great. It tells you pretty much everything you can do, and it does it in a very nice, concise manner with code examples. I love examples because I'm not smart enough to write code on my own. No, I'm just kidding. Is he kidding? But most of the useful features, not the notifications feed, but most of them can be accessed with the cheapest versions of the private API. I honestly don't know what it costs. But if it's something that interests you, you can get a huge amount of benefit just pulling malware samples and analyzing those, throwing them in, like if you have Cuckoo Sandbox or something like that, throwing them in there, let the analysis run, and you can learn a lot about those samples and the things that you're interested in. And you can get as much as you want. So, well, depending on your tier, right? Hopefully, through that little thing at the bottom. But hopefully, if your intelligence program's to the point where you can use something like the notifications feed to track who you're after, then hopefully you can get budget to do that. Or hopefully, VirusTotal will mature their service to the point where they'll allow you to query things a little more easily and get that type of information. So that's all I got. Thank you. Any questions before we wrap up and go have fun and drink, etc.? Justin, do you want to say anything?
Sure.
Anyone?
Name
Yes.
the best kind of cat.
Oh, best kind of cat.
A happy cat.
A happy cat? Not grumpy cat. I hate grumpy cat.
Are you seeing particular threat actors submit things through things like Tor? Are they concealing their IPs through that one?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, some of them are, and I think, I think there's something out there that tracks that, and I can't remember what it is. Do you maybe know offhand? But yeah, certainly some of them do. Obviously, this won't help you if their source is coming from Tor. However, I do know there are two types of sources. There is the IP source, which is I think what you get here. And they also, VirusTotal, they have users, right? They know who's logging in, et cetera. So it would stand to reason that they know the users as well who are submitting things. So even if a user submits something over Tor, maybe if they're logged in or they're stupid, their OPSEC's bad enough that they're still logged in, then you could probably track it that way as well. So.
Are malware authors, do you think they're going to stop using DT to
analysis
now that this is a possibility because source is being tracked?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So yeah, the question was for the mic, like, oh no! Yikes. Oh, no.
Somebody's in a fight.
Yeah, people going crazy in here. Yeah, so no, I mean, one of the questions is, is by, publishing this and, malware authors can obviously look up what VirusTotal provides, just on their website. Will that make, malware authors stop submitting to VirusTotal? And I would imagine that the answer in some cases is yes, but I think we know traditionally too that a lot of actors don't really care. They don't think about that kind of stuff, which is kind of odd. But really, it's because they can kind of go after the low-hanging fruit. So, so yeah, in some cases that that might cause issues, and they might end up changing the way they do things, but hopefully not all of them. So yet another tool to detect the bad guys, and it will evolve as usual. So, anybody else? Yeah.
Would potentially gathering all this information and sharing it in an open database, like you mentioned, be against the license policy for VirusTotal?
Yeah, that's a good question too. So because they provide, I mean, if it was in an open database, yeah, absolutely. They wouldn't want you to do that. But for your own private use, obviously they provide a script to scrape this stuff, well, the API stuff. And the reason they provide the API and probably make it easy for you is because if you were to actually scrape their website for it, their servers have to do all the, a bunch of additional backend stuff to display that to you. Whereas with the API, this is my understanding just from talking to them, they are able to do it a lot more cheaply processing-wise. So they want to encourage you as a private user to use it for that, to use their API. But yeah, but they definitely don't want you to open up another public database or anything like that. Yeah, good question. All right. Well, thank you, everyone.